Good evening, everybody. It's Nick Pennsylvania, and I am here, as I often am, with my good friend Brendan Bond. Good evening, Brendan.
Good evening, Nick.
And so today we kind of wanted to try to do something a little different, just a shorter kind of thing, and if the concept works out, we figured we'll run with it a bit. So a while ago, we've gotten a few questions, and usually we will try to expand upon things that will take us down a story that people send in. These were just some questions, and it wasn't any really good place to kind of shoehorn them in other discussions. And so I've kind of held on to these a bit. And I have not gone over them with Brendan at all.
So this is fresh.
This is very fresh. And so just kind of wanted to have a brief discussion. And how about we just dive right into it? Let's just
riff. Yeah.
Can I riff, Mac? Okay, so I'm going to choose, I like this one. And the question was, do you have faith or do you believe in the various tools used by modern ghost hunters? Which ones do you think are more potentially credible? Which ones do you believe are just nonsense?
Coming in hot.
It's a multi-parter.
Okay, like if we look at like the various tools, my off-the-cuff answer is I think that a tool is only as good as what it is designed for and like the controls around its use for anything that you're doing. You can take a desk lamp and use it as a hammer. It is not designed to be a hammer, but you can absolutely hammer a nail in if that's what you're trying to do. That same desk can hold up a computer monitor, or it can be firewood. You can repurpose things, and a lot of the ghost hunting tools I feel like fall into that repurposed category. Not all of them. The big one is just recording. I think that the vast majority of just EVPs that are standalone pieces of quote unquote evidence typically aren't very good. And I think that how they're captured doesn't really always line up with what the intent of the recording device is kind of meant to be. What I'm saying that is a lot of times whenever people say, "Oh, this is an EVP is out of the normal range of like human speech, like a disembodied voice."
Right, it's outside the spectrum, the sound wave spectrum.
Yeah, because like
frequencies with which we are.
Right.
Yeah.
Normally speaking, like it's either too low or too high and whatnot. And part of that's because like those devices are typically meant for voice recording and are not meant to pick up those really low frequencies or those really high frequencies. They're meant to be in the kind of low mids, like the 200 hertz up to like, 4,000 kilohertz.
And we should kind of clarify too, you are an audio engineer, so the statements you're making aren't just flippant. They are educated.
Right. Yeah. No, I do have a degree in audio engineering. So I know by no means an expert, but I know a thing or two. The ways that the different devices, I mean, every device is different and digital is different than analog. The way that the amplifications works in a lot of those devices, whether it is a actual like FET, like gain staged device, or if it's like attenuated, you can get a lot of artifacts, and you hear that talked about a lot with EVPs, especially whenever you hear people play EVPs that they've like boosted different frequencies or compressed or especially done noise reduction. Again, noise reduction isn't meant to bring out EVPs. It is meant to bring down background noise. Again, the device isn't doing what it is intended to do, which is, capture these voices.
Right. You're getting an unintended consequence of the utilization. I think of, like, when you say analog is different, think when people that didn't dub on cassettes, and, my favorite thing when I was in high school was my 4-track recorder. You can deteriorate tape so that you can never, like, really fully erase a magnetic tape perfectly.
Right.
without some serious equipment, is my understanding. And the more you use and redub and overdub,
Mm-hmm.
record, erase, there will be those vestiges of previous recordings, almost phantoms, shadows
Right.
of a previous recording
Right.
when a tape deteriorates to that point.
Right. And again, that's one of the big things that's cool about analog recordings when it comes to like music and artistic stuff,
Yeah.
but it's not good for documenting evidence
Right.
typically.
It is a limitation, and that's why in the days when tape was
Right.
expensive,
Hmm.
that's why session time was often, it really wasn't the time, it was the tape. And
Right.
yeah, you had to get it in a few takes
Hmm.
because of that. And so when they started mixing multiple tapes
Right.
onto a master, that
Right.
changed things up a bit. But I mean, yeah, the
Hmm.
tape can deteriorate. So if somebody's utilizing magnetic tape because they
Hmm.
say the magnetic properties or whatnot, if they're
Hmm.
using the same tape over and over again, they're going to get some really anomalous things. And then,
Right.
as you say, if you then put them on your computer, your digital workstation, and you do different editing things, like you say, some of these EVPs are the unintended consequence of utilizing filters in a way that they weren't
Hmm.
really intended.
Right. And now on the other side of that coin, what I will say is when it comes to analog recording, if you pull a fresh tape out and you get like a really good EVP that is unedited and you can hear it like without any post editing, you know, that could be really cool. And there are some like kind of like quote unquote famous analog EVP recorders that were very prominently used for like reporting and people doing those kind of things. Like I know there was the Panasonic DR60, and I think there was a Roland one too that was really popular for a long time. Because in theory, what I think a lot of people who use these devices, especially analog ones now, will say is because it's magnetic tape and you're literally moving around electrons on a piece of ephemera, that ghosts can or spirits can somehow manipulate it easier, which is very different than just a sound existing in space, like just the vibration of
Yeah.
sound waves.
So my thinking is because so often with like the TV shows and whatnot,
Hmm.
they always think they hear something, and
Hmm.
it's kind of like the auditory parody. Like
The
I saw.
pareidolia, yeah,
No, and
yeah.
it's like when you see something in the corner of your eye and you
Oh
get spooked.
yes, yeah.
It seems like so many of the EVPs, they have a similar thing where they think they hear something. They hear something out of the corner of their ear, but they're not really sure they heard anything.
Right,
And then they go
right.
back and they find
Here,
something anomalous.
right.
It makes me wonder two things. It makes me wonder if they had just really sat and parsed out any random noise, if
Hmm.
they would find something. Was it because they thought they heard something that they just overanalyzed the white noise in a moment? Now, I will be the first to say
Hmm.
some EVPs that have gotten played to me are, like you said, most of them are bunk. Most of them I have to be coached into hearing
Hmm.
what people are saying they're hearing. But there are those handfuls that are genuinely creepy.
I don't want people to think that I'm saying EVPs or disembodied voices or how we're recording them is necessarily wrong. But I think what I am trying to say is that when you do get something really good, that is very special and we should pay attention to it.
So I'll go on to say, too, because of my previous
Hmm.
statement, that I don't think the means by which it's being recorded should have any factor in it.
Hmm.
If people are saying, I thought I heard something, and then we went back and listened to it,
Hmm.
and there it was very
That's
faint, but
pretty
it was
cool.
right. I'm
Yeah.
saying, though, that
Yeah.
it shouldn't matter. If it's
Hmm.
something that was heard, it shouldn't matter by what means it was captured.
Right.
So on the subject of repurposing thing,
Hmm.
one of the ones I find, I don't think the merit has been fully well. The problem with all of these things is everybody is kind of playing some guesswork. Everybody's got a hypothesis they're working with,
Hmm.
but I don't think anybody has fully demonstrated that the hypothesis carries water. But on the subject of repurposing the EMF detector things,
Right.
and I
Hmm.
think there is some legitimacy in the sense that we know my brother-in-law is an electrician. We've talked about this. You can actually wire things badly in a way that we will have a physical
Right.
reaction to. The fear cages, and it's kind of
Hmm.
like the infrasound
Right.
that we've spoken about too. So here again, so there is some validity, just like
Absolutely.
if
Yeah.
you've got that carbon monoxide leak, maybe
Right.
that's why you're hallucinating. If you've got a bad junction
Hmm.
down in the basement or in a wall, that might be why you find this room unsettling.
Right. And I think that with the anything that's either EMF or K2, anything that either measures an existing magnetic field or fluctuations in the existing magnetic field, because those are two different things. Like whether
Agreed.
is it fluctuating, yes or no, or is it present and how intense is it, are different things. So I think that again, those two devices, which were not intended to hunt ghosts, can be used honestly to probably not debunk, but come up with alternative explanations that aren't spiritual in nature to why people are having certain effects in a certain area, which again I think is a valuable tool
Right.
that these folks can be using if they're using it in the right way. I have heard anecdotal stories from people, and they're on these shows and other podcasts where people do get especially like spikes in EMF fields that are kind of crazy seeming that correlate to other phenomena. And like that is interesting from a narrative sense. I don't know enough about baseline EMF to know if like if you just take an EMF reader and sit it somewhere, are you just going to get some blips here and there?
Right.
Like again, I don't know enough to know how to use that properly.
I don't either, but I
But
imagine there's a lot of things that could interfere with it, like different
mhm,
metals that just could be laying on a
bouncing,
table.
right?
Right, exactly. But the bottom line is it is measuring something that is real.
Mhm,
And as
right,
as you say, it
right,
wasn't designed for ghost hunting or whatever, but the my issue with the hypothesis is that it doesn't give predictive results. I do
right,
think, though, that utilized in a skeptical way in which you can say, hey, there's kind of this fear cage sort of situation happening here. Let's resolve this because this is probably a safety issue to begin with.
right.
Let's
Yeah,
resolve this and see if these things you're experiencing are still there. I think if you're serious, you have to try to excise any
right.
other factors.
Right. And a lot of like especially a lot of folks I know that do ghost hunting specifically as like a recreational thing on a regular basis. That seems to be how a lot of people do utilize those tools. It's not like, oh, a reading on X device is proof positive of paranormal activity. It needs to be used in conjunction with other things.
Yeah, I think we're both kind of on the same wavelength here by saying anything that's measuring or documenting
Hmm.
audio, visual, magnetic, electronic, they have some merit. They clearly
Hmm.
weren't maybe designed with this purpose, but they do have some merit. Let me switch over. What things have you seen people utilize that you think are just totally bunk? Because that was part of the other
So
question.
I'm probably going to catch some flack for this because they're so popular now. Um, but I'm not sure what they're even in specifically called, but the form tracking that you see on a lot of different devices now. Basically, it's basically a PS3 or PS4 connects camera that people hook up to an iPad that uses a software
Oh, is this
that
like in the squares or
yeah,
everywhere?
yeah. It says it uses IR light to basically make a form. It's like, oh, there's a form here, kind of thing. And it's supposed to help you see ghosts that aren't. It's supposed to help you see like an entity or something like that. I think that is bunk. um, I think that if you have a computer that is meant to generate human form images, that's what it's going to do. That's what it's designed to do. I've never seen any compelling evidence of that. If someone out there knows better how those things are coded and has a reason to why they're legit, I would love to learn more about them because I think IR technology can be really, really useful because it gives us a whole other portion of the light spectrum that we're not normally seeing it, you know.
Okay, so that does confirm that IR infrared, I'm
Yeah.
assuming. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if those because I don't know enough about that. I've seen them utilized on a couple shows, for
Right.
example, but I didn't really get it. And
It's yeah.
if it's something again that's supposed to be looking for
So-
human form, it's probably going to be doing like what we do so frequently,
Right.
which is that pattern-seeking behavior.
Right.
Something like the speed with which we can recognize a face in things that are not faces.
Right, exactly. And so, I mean, that's one of those things where I think the intent isn't there. Now, along with that, these kind of get lumped together. Is the idea of like ghost boxes and spirit boxes. I think the idea of a ghost box or spirit box, just the ones that do the random scanning that people use specifically with like the Estes method, that I think can be super compelling. And I've seen some really cool evidence around that. Now, there are ghost boxes out there that literally have like guitar pedals built into them that like add reverb and delay and stuff like that. That's trying not to
more.
yeah, I'm trying
Hunter.
not to like yuck someone's yum, but like it's I don't know. Like if the ghost box you have has a spooky knob, then I'm not sure if that's a scientific.
No, Brendan,
Not sure if
Brendan.
that's a scientific. Yeah.
If you turn the spooky knob up and things get spooky, I think you found your evidence right there. Apparently, this place has been haunted by knobs this whole time.
But this ghost box goes to 11.
The knobs hunting knobs.
So like those ones, I'm not a huge fan of. The I think devices that they call REM pods that also measure either that measure electromagnetic field stuff. I'm not sure if it's a REM pod or if it's something else, but the ones that do fields, just like the EMF and K2 meters, I think those are dubious at best. Now, the ones that measure like seismic activity, like that measure like vibrations, those can be pretty cool. But however, like anyone who lives in literally any house anywhere knows that like things are always like kind of moving. Like things aren't as still as we think they are.
Right.
Especially if you live in a town where there are like trucks driving by or a train.
Of course, there was the Green Tree Mall, which we all know would shake anytime semis would pass by. So it was constantly shaking a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So I think that like stuff like that is like anything that's made for ghost hunting, but just repurposes those things that were designed for other fields.
Yeah.
I think generally like you're probably getting diminishing returns on those. What do you think about the ghost boxes though? The ones that do the scanning?
I'm glad you asked because I was gonna say the two I think are bunk.
Mm-hmm.
And let me get the first one out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Dowsing.
Just dowsing in general?
Dowsing in general, I think is totally bunk because, okay, you've got two sticks. And some people say the sticks actually need to be metal of some sort or they need to be hickory or whatever. The bottom line is it's bunk. And the reason why is because some people say they can find ghosts. Some people say they can be used to find precious metals or water. Mm-hmm. Well, how do you know? What if you need to dig a new well, but these sticks are set for ghosts or just more of this useless gold? Like there's not, here we go again. Like there's not predictive capability by how do they work? No one's given anything that isn't some sort of spiritual answer. So if you believe in them for spiritual reasons, have at it, but you're not going to win me over with that. But the spirit boxes, I think, are bunk too. And here's my real big problem with them is the fact of the matter is, okay, yes, they're scanning through radio stations. They're saying they're supposed to be giving off energy. Well, the only energy they're really giving off is what's coming out of the wall, and that's all being utilized within the device itself. So the only real energy that's being produced is the wiggle in the air from the speaker. What's more important though is it says it's scanning through radio frequencies at like nanoseconds and whatnot. And so, but the bottom line is you are introducing human voice and we can see how much we can dig in and find things in white noise. Well, now you're just adding elements that essentially you're trying to confuse yourself, is how I interpret it. You know, it's
Hmm.
like let's say we're trying to find someone in a crowd, and we're going to, hey, one way we can help us find people in a crowd is to put cheesecloth over the lens. Well, now you're done
Yeah.
something that's going to intentionally confuse you,
Right.
or just obfuscate what you're trying to observe. So I am not convinced of that. I think it's an interesting idea to talk
Mhm.
about, but I don't think there's anything to it. I'm not convinced.
Yeah, so two things. One with the like dowsing, and I would say this goes with almost like any type of scrying, like people who use like pendulums, anything along those lines. I think that has much more to do with like the spiritual side of things. I think people who get any kind of anecdotal results with those things, it's probably more the user than the device. It just
Yeah.
happens to be like a method. Um,
Don't grab a plumb bob and then tell me that you're ghost hunting.
well, right, yeah, but at the same time, I think a person who can grab a plumb bob and then get results again, that's probably more the person than like the plumb bob, you know, because
It's a tool you rarely need, but when you need
what do you do? Boy, is it
it's
important.
there. Yeah, it's
Um,
handy.
because yeah, so I don't want to like discount those as like spiritual items, but as far as like a tool, again, if that's what works for you and you get what you think of as results that you can corroborate with other things, sure,
Yeah.
but as far as the pieces of metal or wood themselves, they're cool. I think they're cool, but I don't
Yeah,
think,
and I
yeah,
mean it's definitely something that has some history, but it
right.
still it doesn't make it real. But yeah, again, just to the spirit box, again, it's not what is it measuring? It's only
So,
giving you more opportunity to read
mhm.
into something.
Right. So that's why I really like the whole idea of the Estes method, which we should do like an entire episode on sometime. I'd love if anyone out there has extensive experience like on either side of that equation, love to talk to you about how it's gone for you. Because for those of you who aren't familiar, what the Estes method is, because it kind of uses some of the things we've talked about, is you have two people. You have one person who puts headphones on that are plugged into a spirit box that is doing, like we said, rapidly scanning through available radio frequencies at a high rate. So it's a lot of white noise with just random little bits coming through. I believe some people just use random noise generators as well for this purpose. But then what they do is they put on headphones. They put on like a sleep mask kind of thing, so they're basically can't see anything, can't hear anything. And then what you do is you have another person ask questions and document the whole process. And what you can in theory get sometimes is you have the person who is the receiver, for lack of a better term, providing answers to questions that the asker is asking, which is not without its like problems. But again, the anecdotal evidence you get from some of this stuff, when it's on, is really striking sometimes. Like it's really hard to argue with that there isn't something kind of like going on. But again, I think that has much more to do with the person from in like a spiritual sense than it does the devices in that case. So again, I'd love to talk to someone who has some like actual hours in doing that because I think it's a really cool idea. I don't know if I would do it. I feel like I would get freaked out. Um, but again, that's kind of it's more of a me problem than a problem with the devices or the tools, if you will.
So I think just to kind of wrap up, one, have you ever seen Altered States? That's all I could
Altered.
think of. Yeah, that's all I could. It's a not great movie, but whatever. Anyway,
I'm sure other folks out there have. Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry to remind you of it. Anyway, it seems like we are both kind of together on the same page that anything that measures or documents, so audio recordings,
Hmm.
visual recordings, electromagnetic fields,
Hmm.
and maybe like heat stuff, because
Yeah.
heat has always been
Right.
associated.
That's a big, yeah.
And
the
these
thermal
things
stuff.
are not these things are not infallible, because we, especially if we're earnestly looking for something, we can read too much into random stuff. But I think we're in agreement that whether you want to buy into them for a spiritual angle or not, dowsing and the spirit box. And what was the IR one you said?
Oh, I always just call them form tracking devices.
tracking.
I'm sure someone will write in with the official title for them. Again, they're cool, you know.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it has to do with like these things in conjunction with the experiences people are having. Like anything on their own, just sitting there, they don't do a whole lot.
Well, there we go. So, yeah. So, good question. Well, kind of a series of questions. But yeah, that came from an email from a while back. I wrote it down, and it's been sitting here. So, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you have faith, confidence? Do you believe in the various tools used in modern ghost hunting? What ones do you think have merit? What ones do you think are nonsense? There we go. So, yeah, thank you for the conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if you have any questions you'd like us to just want our thoughts on, please reach out. Let us know if you have any stories, or if you have anything that you think we should be researching. We've gotten some of our best episodes that way, of people being like, oh, have you heard of blank? And we've been like, no, but now we're heading down the rabbit hole. So
Absolutely.
So let us know. But you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at the Ghost Furnace Podcast, or you can just send us an email at theghostfurnacepodcast@gmail.com.